welcome to another episode of Breaking Barriers.
We're back.
So we are back. So back.
Now at Mustache
here.
Media.
At Mango Mustache. We
Mango
love this.
Mustache Media.
Absolutely. Shout out to our new producer, the new Dre, Alex Shelty. We appreciate him. We are excited. Shout out to our sponsors, Rise to Greatness, Tyler Lincoln Barnes, Community Savings Bank, IMON Communication, Inclusive ICR, and Bankers Trust. We appreciate your support.
Shout out to Nick, our partner, who usually would be here with us.
Yeah.
He would usually be all over this. Today, he's home. He's a little sick, but he sends all of his love your way. So if you know Nick and you've seen what we've done before, send him some well wishes. Let's flood the airways with well wishes for Nick.
We love you, Nick. So, hey, I understand we want to try kind of a new twist to our segment today.
Yep. So let's talk about it, because today's segment is all about, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about rocking your vote. So we are all about that. And so along with what we're doing today, we're trying out this new thing that we call equity. And so with equity, we're going to bring with you what's popular, what's hot, what are the thoughts around equity right now. So for my first one, and this is actually not equity necessarily, but it's an opinion piece, right? Yeah. I was having a recent conversation with everything around voting, and someone brought up Jill Stein, right, and the Green Party. And so the question in the room for those out there is, Jill Stein, is she Green Party or is she a grifter? Ooh, equity. And so here's the thing. I'm a fan of the Green Party, right? And so again, I hate the two-party system. Let's just talk about it. Support, I'm definitely, everybody probably can guess where I'm leaning into. And I think we need to worry about our planet. And I think we need to revise all these things. So I'd never thought about it. And someone said, yeah, Joy, but oftentimes it feels like they come around every 4 years, they do work, and then they disappear. And this someone was a very active activist in the New York scene. And so I was like, that's some equity. Because is it a party or what do we think? What do you think, partner? What do you think?
Is it a party? Yeah. I'm not a fan of the two-party system either. And I talk to all my friends who are not voting or want to vote third party. And I care about the planet too. We have to care about that stuff. So I get it. I don't know what she is. I don't know if she's Green Party or I don't know where she stands, but what I know is I agree with many of those concepts.
Exactly.
I know I agree with many of those concepts.
Exactly.
Right.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. That was my feedback to them.
Let me tell you my equity. So I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about a conversation I had prior to an equity symposium that was a few weeks ago in our community. And I recall getting I got a call from a white man who was going to be a panelist on that show. And the conversation was, and I have a ton of respect for this individual, by the way. But the conversation was, I'm not sure how I should answer these questions, and I'm not sure what I should talk about. I'm a little uncomfortable in this space.
So I'm going to back up. So somebody selected them for a panelist for expertise.
Somebody selected them for a panelist and assumed that they had the expertise. And this person felt uncomfortable and felt the need to call one of their friends of color to ask the question.
Okay.
Help me, Anthony. Help me understand how I could be on this panel and how I can make sure I answer these questions. Yeah. And the moment of me was, there could have been a moment of defensiveness, right? Yeah. There could have been this, you trying to tokenize, what are you trying to do here? Yeah. And I struggled with that. I had to drink my tea.
Yeah, right.
And struggle with that because the question is, am I leveraging? Is he calling me that I have a black friend call? Or
the lifeline, right?
Is he intent versus impact? Is he sincerely calling me for advice because he's uncomfortable? But my first question was, why are you on that panel? If you didn't know the answer, but it worked out well. I gave him some good advice. I had to self-reflect.
Yeah.
I had to absorb what I was being asked, and God, are you using me? Is this a tokenism moment? Are you using me to teach?
What's Ladrina say? Our good friend Ladrina out of the Quad Cities.
Yeah, Ladrina. Shout out to Ladrina, and I love it. And I've always taken this tip everywhere. I just talked to somebody yesterday about it. Actually, Ladrina will tell you this ain't about tokenism. I have a voice. I understand when I'm being tokenized when I'm leveraging my space. So if you ask me to come into a room and you ask me to be a part of this, then you're asking for all of me.
That's right.
And I'm going to have my voice in the room. You might not like what I got to say, but I have knowledge. And so I'm going to leverage my space. I'm not token. I understand why you called me in this space.
Yes.
I understand why this gentleman called me.
Exactly.
The easy thing for me to do was to blow it off.
Right.
Well, how do I leverage it? That's what Ladrina would tell you.
That's what Ladrina would say. Definitely agree with that, because sometimes it is. People may be reaching out with you because of your identity, right?
Right.
Not knowing that if you're asking me, I'm going to bring my full identity there, and I am going to be an influence in that room. I'm going to take up space, right? So when you ask me, or when you get those opportunities, thinking about how you can do that is so important.
Yeah.
And so that's our new segment. And give us some feedback out there.
Yeah.
Let us know, how do you feel about the Equa Tea as we bring to you the newest, the hottest, the gossip, the whatever there is out there around equity. We want to talk about it. And so give us some feedback. Drop us some information, some questions you may have about the Equa Tea.
Yeah, we want to spill the beans.
Along spilling the beans, and this is a reach, bean counting, and then this is another reach, because bean counting goes to voting.
Voting.
Right? And the Electoral College, which I hate. That's some more equity that shouldn't be, right? But along that line, Anthony, we are on the cusp of either sprinting ahead and having our first black Asian woman president, or, y'all see my shirt, 1619.
Yes.
Are we going back?
Yes.
And so again, what are your thoughts about that?
You know, I've been struggling.
Yeah.
I've been struggling personally and been struggling professionally about what's the world going to look like on November 6th? Where are we going to be? And are we going backwards? And I'm baffled at our country. Not surprised, but baffled. You know, we all can have an opinion about where you vote and how you vote, but when we talk about the issues, forget the humans. That's the easy part. But the issues, I'm struggling with how we are not paying attention to these real issues on the table.
What about when someone says, what about Gaza? What about when someone says, our voting issue is happening on top of a genocide? What do you say to those individuals?
I respect that completely. As I look at that war, I'm not there. I'm not a Palestinian, but I empathize with the people who feel that way, and I believe we should stop the war. But then I have to begin to think logically about what are we asking America to do, and who are the people who puts us in the best position to do that.
Okay.
Who puts us in the best position to do that? I'm going to leave that up to y'all, but who puts us in the best position to do that?
Right.
So when I'm talking to my friends, I have the utmost empathy. I have a really good friend that I actually have leaned on a lot over the last couple of years, a young graduate in Iowa. And this person, she is so smart and so logical and absolutely believes there's a genocide happening. And listening to this individual who is a member of the Muslim community, I empathize and I understand. I don't understand from her lens, but I empathize with what she's feeling.
Right.
We've had some conversations. She's educated me because I'm listening.
Right.
Because I'm listening.
That part of the work.
That's the part of the work.
Yeah.
We don't do a lot. Even whether I disagree or agree, I have to listen.
Yes.
And so, Gaza's a tough one. And I believe we need to stop that war. But I believe we need to, if I'm asking what are the United States' role? As a black man who, the people I'm standing on their shoulders who died for me to go cast a vote, I can't not vote.
Yes.
I can't not vote. So now I have to ask myself, maybe you, Joe, I'd be curious, and this is sort of a segue to a question to you.
Yeah.
Are we choosing the better of the evils? That's what we hear. What's that phrase, the better of the evils?
For me.
So I'm trying to think rationally about my choice, but am I choosing the better of the evils?
So for me, I feel like, first off, the system that was set up, it was never set up for marginalized identity. So if you are a woman, when our country was founded, you couldn't vote, right? You were property, essentially. If you are a person of color. So, and that's a reality. I know there's people out there that want to erase that, but that's the reality, right? So in that regard, until we totally are able to dismantle the system, there is always going to be a fight in that system for equity, for justice.
Right.
And so the question I ask, and like when I talk to my oldest daughter, because we have had many nights.
Me too, and I've had to call you about my conversations with my daughter.
Many nights. My question is, who would you rather have to fight for the better outcome? Do you want to fight somebody that's not even going to pick up the phone and take your call? Or do you want to fight somebody that you could potentially make influence with? Because let's be real, my personal opinion about right now is I think that we have Governor Walz as the VP candidate based off of young people.
Yes.
I think that had there not been the pressure from young people, I think we would have definitely been looking at Governor Shapiro.
I agree.
My thoughts, right? And
I
so
would agree with that.
They need Pennsylvania so much, don't necessarily need Minnesota, right? Like we kind of know where they're going. And so I think young people and keeping that pressure got us someone that's a little more progressive, right?
Yeah.
And so I cannot tell them when they've been fighting, when you think about the Black Lives Matter movement, when you think about how old Martin Luther King actually was when he was doing the bulk of his work, right? There are so many people that I respect that their time to thrive, they were super young and we don't realize that. And so I cannot tell them just to like chill and you all need to do nothing when I know that their impact has created so much change and continues to do so. That being said, my frame of reference to my daughter was like, who would you rather fight? The person that by this time next year would call the military on you for actually you all doing the protests. Her pushback to me has been that it's already happening. So I struggle with that because I struggle with always consistently needing an awareness about what actually is happening out there and where we're going. Now, on a personal level, all the work we do for the most part is supported under the Biden administration. So again, from a personal level, when I think about entrepreneurship, home ownership, all of those things, those are infrastructure. I care about the planet. They've done the most investment into the planet ever, right?
Absolutely.
And so on a personal level, I know that needs to happen and I know we still need to support them in that way. And the hate that is out there now, when I walk down the street, the big trucks roll by and they rev their engines up because they want the attention. So I look at the Trumper 2020 or 2024 stickers or whatever have you. That hate has just been magnified. Now, if you're a big person that drives one of those trucks, no, I'm going to ignore you every time. And I always assume that you're compensating with the big truck for something else that isn't big. And that's why... The equity. But on the flip side of that, though, I know that people have really been emboldened into hate. And while people say it's good to know who your enemy is, it's good to know what people really think about you, I also think there's a balance of people feeling shame about prejudice and about some of the ugliness and not being allowed to really lean into that. And currently, as a nation, we're really been encouraged to lean into some very ugly things.
Yeah, and I don't think we want to lean into it. To your point, on a personal level, my challenge is, right, and we talk about this a lot, the emotional IQ and the balance. Because we see the obvious in our face, but as people in the space who are trying to encourage and educate and influence, it makes it very difficult. And so we practice what we preach. We practice emotional IQ, and I practice it every day. But on a personal level, when we see what is happening in our country with two different candidates with two different philosophies, that's okay to have two different philosophies. But when we start talking about character, and we start talking about decisions that people make, that the way people feel philosophically in their personal life, how that impacts decisions in the workplace, we can't ignore how that impacts decisions in our country leaders.
Exactly.
And so my baffling struggle is, how is it that we are in a country today where, according to polls, nearly 50% of the people are okay with an ideology that is misogynistic, with an ideology that I believe is racist.
That's patriarchy.
With the ideology, the patriarchy. And it's in the open now. And I talk to a lot of my elders about this because I struggle personally. I talk to my elders that grew up in the 60s, that grew up in the civil rights era. And I asked them, was it this bad? I mean, I know you don't see us getting sprayed by hoses, and you don't see black people getting sprayed by hoses, and but is it bad? Was it that bad in the 60s? And to a man, Joy, or a woman, every one of them have told me yes. If the approach might be different, we're not getting sprayed, but the fear and the vitriol in our country is as bad as it was in the 60s. And I always thought we would never live through that. So I have to begin to ask the questions, why? Why? And if we're not willing, you just said it, if we're not willing as a country to address the real why and to dig in, to lean into those issues.
I also want to say, too, when we talk about elections, we have this antiquated thing called the Electoral College.
Yeah.
And when you go back and you think about the popular vote, has Trump ever won a popular vote?
No.
There's literally been millions of people that have voted more one way than the other.
Yes.
So I think that there's this push in media, too, for us to feel like, 50% of the people feel this way. And then also, I mean, it sells, right? Like conflict sells.
Right.
And then there's this push in media. And so, well, what are we going to do? When the reality is, if we go back and look at the popular vote, there's millions of more people that don't agree with a lot of those racist, antiquated thoughts processes, right? Now, another systemic issue, the Electoral College. What do you think about that?
We know, and I would encourage anybody to look this up, to check the history, to fact check us. But it's very clear why the Electoral College was created. It was created to continue to suppress the votes of black people. Look it up. I'm not. Double check me. I couldn't. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
You sure you're not a bot and you're saying that? Anthony's a bot.
I'm a bot.
Anthony's turned to a bot,
I'm turned
audience.
to a bot. But I want you to get your Google machine out, the phone's in your hand, look it up.
Partner, not Google machine. Okay, go ahead. I know my partner looks young. He just said Google machine. Okay.
That's my Google machine. That's my OG. So, but honestly, that's what it was. It needs to go. And so the question is, why is it still here?
Why is it still here?
Why is it still here?
Right.
What happened to one man, one vote, one woman, one vote, right?
Yes.
And so the argument may be, well, what about the person in Billings, Montana, who lives in a town of 2 people?
One man, one vote.
One man, one vote.
Mean?
What does that mean exactly? What does that mean? That person still has a vote.
Yeah, I've never really understood it, especially even like now when we think about Iowa, right? So demographic breakdowns, and we're coming from Iowa. If you're watching this and you don't know, we have this conversation all the time about like flyover country, right? And we got to lean so much into the rural country, even in Iowa, right? Here's the thing. The bulk of our money comes from the metropolitan areas in Iowa. The bulk of our people live in the metropolitan areas in Iowa. Yet the interests of the people is oftentimes not focused on the metropolitan areas in Iowa. Now, here's my thing. I'm an equitarian person, right? And so I do think that there needs to be space and place to make sure we're supporting our rural communities.
Absolutely.
But their vote shouldn't outweigh our needs,
No.
right? And in the areas of Iowa, in the metropolitan areas of Iowa, they are very diverse communities.
Right.
Most of our schools, if you're like in an urban school district, your school district ranges from about 32% students of color to majority students of color districts right here in Iowa.
Right here in Iowa.
So the interest, all this legislation coming out that's anti-DEI, it is in no way, shape, or form setting our state up for where it's going. In no way, shape, or form. And if people knew that, if they knew that the bulk of our power, the bulk of our money is produced in cities, then we could leverage differently what our interests are, or we should be.
And guess what that high tide helps?
Yes.
It helps the people in the rural community.
Yes, it does.
Because it's about equity. The decisions would never be made to leave out people in rural communities.
Exactly.
But what is happening is we're seeing the weight of the rural community outweigh the weight of the density of people.
Yes.
Now, let me ask you a question.
Let's do it.
Because we're always about why. We're seeking to understand whether we agree or disagree, right?
Yeah.
We at least want to disagree, if we disagree with something, from a place of being informed.
Exactly.
Where do most of the diversity in our states and our cities live?
In the cities.
In the cities.
Yeah.
When we talk about urban cities and we
Yeah.
talk about the demographic makeup of those cities, what do those people look like? Those diverse people.
Black and brown.
They look like us.
Yeah.
Or they are a member of the LGBT community or what have you.
Women.
Women.
Yeah.
And so again, as a rational person who wants to say, I need to make a decision about the leaders of my country, and when I look at candidates, and I look at one candidate who continues to denigrate those very cities that you were talking about, how do I not make the correlation that that's an issue about race?
Are you
or
talking
gender?
about that there's a garbage? What was the statement about
Yeah,
the city in the ocean?
Yeah.
Are you talking about
Puerto Rico is an island of garbage.
and we're talking about beautiful people vacation there, but
Yeah.
now it's an island of garbage, right? Yeah, exactly.
It's okay to take the boat over there,
Yes.
the cruise, but suddenly they're garbage. Again,
Floating piece of garbage.
Hey, floating.
Thank you, Alex. Thank
hey, floating.
you.
Thank you,
We
Dre.
needed that help.
Yes.
A floating piece of garbage
Right.
in the middle of the ocean. And I spent a lot of time around Latin, Hispanic people. I just am like,
My partner speaks fluent Spanish, by the way, bilingual.
Más o menos. but at the end of the day, I just don't know. Again, it's the DEI lack of, right? It's the reason why representation matters, because if they had a more representative leadership team as the GOP, that joke would have never flown, because
Right.
somebody would have said, much like that candle that was Bath and Body Works with the KKK hats, equity, that's some
Yes.
tea too.
Yes.
Somebody would have said, no, you cannot make this jokes. There is such a growing group of people. You cannot offend this group of people. It is going to be bad for the results of the election, right?
Right.
But when you don't, and we talk about DEI as a strength, but a lot of people don't really view it as that. When you don't view it as that,
Right.
then you make those kind of mistakes. You approve a joke that essentially could cost you
Right.
the election.
When did DEI become anti-white?
I know.
When did DEI become?
I know.
And so, again, most of us, and most of us rational thinkers, or most of us folks who were taught how to think critically, we can play one-off games all day long, right? I don't like black people because this happened in my life. I got beat up by a black person. I don't like white people because a white person didn't give me a job. We all of us have those one-offs, but we're taught to critically think and think about trends, right? And so I struggle with how any rational person can see the trends of that misogyny and trends of that racism that we saw at Madison Square Garden. That's not a one-off. And so when you compile that against the historical decisions and comments, I am struggling to how any rational person can think that's okay.
They're
then
racist.
They're racist. Let's call them what they are. Let's call it. And racist is such a charged word because our perception in America and our perception amongst people who don't want to be called that name
is you got to have a swastika.
I got to have a swastika. I got to have a bald head and tattoos, or I got to be wearing a hood.
Yes.
But didn't we learn from Charlottesville that a racist, and again, we have to stop worrying about how charged that word is and define it for what it is. It is a person who is anti-color of skin. That was created here in America. So the question is the racist the person who feels this way, that's your insurance agent? Is the racist who feels this way the waiter that served you at the restaurant? Is the racist who feels this way your lawyer? Is the racist who feels this way your politicians and your leaders? Are we willing to be honest about that? And we're not. We're not.
I think we're being pushed to be, though.
Yeah.
I think in this moment, if there is any good that can come out of it, there has been, because I would say, like, our generation, we took our foot off the gas. We did. Like, you know, you have the civil rights group, you have the boomers, and they definitely had clear their feet on the gas. We know we need to fight for these things. And then we were the beneficiaries of their fight. And so we start pulling our punches, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
Not as much hit with our, not as much power. We took our foot off the gas. And I think that we're here now in some part because we took our foot off the gas on equity, on DEI, on why justice. We assume that justice just naturally happens, and it does not. Yeah. And so when I think about us, like in this work that we do, we tell people all the time, like, you have to be intentional in what you want to do. And I think for some reason we all were thinking like justice happens without intent, and it does not.
Right.
And so as a nation now, we got to decide who we want to be, and then we have to focus on intentionally moving there every day.
Right. So, Joy, I'm gonna play devil's advocate with you.
Come on.
I think I already
Devil
know,
don't need no advocate. But
don't need no advocate. I'm gonna play with you. I'm gonna play with you.
Come on.
So, and I was having this conversation with a white leader, a very prominent leader in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where I'm from. And to your point, weren't we intentional in 2020? Were we intentional?
No.
Were we intentional about the work we were trying to do? What happened from 2020 and our America and our advocacy for DEI versus 2024?
We were not. And here's why. I literally had some discussions with, because you know, like I've started some things and been a part of starting some things in this area, and I was pushing to say, hey, here's the thing. We have a window of opportunity right now. And as a window of opportunity, we can either figure out how to make this window an open door, pull the frame out, open it up, so there's no closing to that, or this window will be closed. I did not foresee that they would close it, nail it shut, put some cement over it, throw it down the bottom of the hole.
Right.
I didn't see that.
And cover it up like a gangster. Yeah.
I didn't see that. But I did see, because, well, again, what we have to remember is we didn't get, this is by design. We're here by design. Right. And so if there has been a very intentional system of oppression built around sexism, around racism, around classism, all of the isms, then the system that does that apart, we have to be as much, if not more, focused on that. And in 2020, we were very emotional, which we should have been. We watched a man be killed on national TV, on everything. And even just the way people would play the video as if he doesn't have daughters. Right. As if he didn't have a child. As if he didn't have a family, that every time they see that would literally have to relive that, right? Yeah. And so I say, so there was an emotional point to that. But thinking about that translation, that EQ factor that corresponds with, and now we need to do this. Right. And we're going to stay focused on it, and we're not going to. I remember when people started talking about critical race theory. I remember, and you know this.
Yes.
I said, if it were me, I would go, if somebody brings that to me, I'm going to say, we've never taught critical race theory in K-12 education.
Ever.
Next question. And I'm going to be so dismissive that they're going to feel so stupid because again, but we were in this point where we were so in the emotion that the things that we needed to block, the things that we needed to address, we didn't do it. We let them take a whole narrative around critical race theory, something, again, that was never taught in K-12. Now, you might want to argue and we might want to talk about whether there should be a critical race theory thins in K-12. I might say yes. But as of today, it's never been taught there. And so how did we allow a people to build a whole anti-DEI legislation based on something that was never happening? And that was us not keeping our foot on the brake.
Exactly.
On the gas.
And I would add to that, if we think about 2020, money, emotions through money and people coming out the woodwork. And I'm talking about folks and leaders in the communities that normally wouldn't deal with this.
Oh, I'm a DEI consultant now.
Yes. I'm a DEI consultant.
There's money over there.
And white business leaders were buying it up and writing checks left and right. And I did a presentation at one time on don't just write checks. And we talk, write the checks.
I want the check.
Write the checks. It's an and, right? It's an and.
I am a make it rain person.
Make it rain. Cut the checks. Make it rain. But what else are you doing? Now, I'm going to cut the check for you. But I need to tell you what to do with that check.
No,
so when you're getting too aggressive, so what I think has happened in a span of 4 years, to your point, they put the goddamn nail in the cement and they're trying to drive it into the hole. Because it's almost like you gave us, I shouldn't say you gave us, you tried to join us with this movement of uncovering the real history of our country. And suddenly when it got too ugly, or people that normally don't have power and influence and agency suddenly have that. And this is my opinion, and I could be wrong, became too much. And this cycle has happened before, right? You got too much power. And if you have too much power, we can't have that.
And I want to even challenge that because did we really have too much power? You see,
no, of course we didn't.
A lot of companies created DEI, Chief Diversity Officer positions, and as soon as they got too much, cut.
Of course you did.
And
absolutely.
They didn't expand diverse people in the VPs and the leadership suite. It was, well, you're a CDO and you're a part of me. And then as soon as it's too much, you're out of there. Easy cut. It was never really ingrained in the company anyway.
And to your point, and I think that's where I think we're going the same place. Was it really ever serious in 2020, or was it just about emotion? Were we really ever serious about this movement of equity in America, or was it just about the moment?
Right.
And we're seeing in real time, because of the CRT. CRT was the boogeyman.
Yes. And
then when that didn't work, it became DEI.
Yes.
The work that we do that lifts all boats, right?
Yes.
And so we're seeing it in real time. If you were to draw a graph of the number of DEI leaders or the number of DEI initiatives that were taking place in 2020 versus today, it would look like that.
So I've heard, though, there was an article that came out recently that said there actually has been an increase lately in DEI. I got to share it with you. And so I'm curious, and I didn't get to read it yet, but I'm very curious to see is that true, and has it been another one of those things where, just like I said with the media, where they're like 50% of the country believes this, and I'm like, oh, the popular vote would say differently, right? Like the popular vote, it's our system that is really screwed up. But a lot of our people, they understand that we got work to do and that we don't need certain people in power to do so, right? And so I'm curious to see. I got to read the article, partner. I'll send it to you. We'll talk about it next time in Equity.
But you know what you just did? You did what we try to tell people to do who don't understand this. Are you willing to seek to understand? So you've seen a report, and now we're going to go see, is that true? Can we validate that? Because it matters. I would ask, why don't we do that when we talk about the history of oppression in this country? Exactly. I'm having a conversation right now. I'm not even going to say her name, but a friend of mine that I've known since I was 16 years old. I know she's a Republican. She's a white woman, and she lives in Texas right now. She's lived in New York, and she's lived in Georgia. And I've been working with her for a better part of 6 or 7 years. And this white woman, the other day, we're having a conversation about the South and the North. Now, she grew up in the same community I did, went to the same schools I did. And I start talking to her about the Southern strategy, and I start talking to her about migration from the South. And she says to me with a straight face, well, straight tone of voice because I couldn't see her. Oh my God, Anthony, I did not know that your family didn't come from the South. I assumed that the black people that lived in the North, when we had the Civil War, and the black people that lived in the North, they came over on the boats just like I did. Mm-hmm. Has no idea of the historical slave trade, has no idea of the Underground Railroad, has no idea why black people moved to the North, has no idea of this historical context.
Design.
Blew her mind. Mm-hmm. But we grew up in the same community. We went to the same schools. And this is one of the people that would tell you that I don't see color and I don't understand. And now it's hitting her, right? And we've been having these conversations off and on for about 8 years. But every time I hit her with some knowledge, something on X, something on X tells her something different.
Oh my gosh.
How are you dealing with that, Joy, in your circle?
Can we cut X off? So I recently... first off, I had unsubscribed, took X off my phone just because
Me too.
I do not like Elon Musk.
Right.
And so because of that, but he makes a really cool car. I admit that. But I had literally taken it off. And so recently, though, I kept, one of my good friends always sends me information from X where I'm like, I'm going to have to put it back on my phone at least for a minute because there is, if you get in a certain... Once it kind of gets to your knowing your algorithm, you will get a lot of good information on there as well. And I think that it has to be those things like I just did when I said I seen this article, and in seeing this article, I thought, let me go research it because I don't know if it's true. I won't even bring it up because I want to know before I talk about it.
Yes.
I want to be from a place of informed expression. And so I think a lot of the people that follow things on X, I've had friends too that will say things and I'm like, hey, I don't think that's true, but just pop it in Google and see what comes up and then make sure what you look at is from a reputable news source.
Yes.
Don't just go back to X. Don't just go to YouTube. And a recent argument or discussion, I won't say argument, I was having, and I told the person, Google it and look at BBC. You can look at what BBC says about it. You don't even have to look at, if you're not a CNN, Fox, MSNBC. Okay, look outside of some of those and see what they say. And I think you will be surprised. So that's been my thing, because a lot of times, especially if you get people that are too lost in the sauce, if they've been in MAGA for 6 years now,
right?
I'm just like, hey, Google it and then look at what BBC says, or look at one of these other news outlets that are known for just, I don't know, something weird here, reporting the news. Right.
But we were all taught that, at least I thought we were.
Yes.
For whatever reason, we've decided to abandon doing basic research. We are...
it's not as interesting.
No, we're a country and a world of memes.
Yeah. The lie is better.
And to your point, if again... And I know we're picking on X, but there's a reason for that. And I'll give you an example from I had lunch with a very wealthy white man in Cedar Rapids, Iowa yesterday.
Anthony has a lot of wealthy friends. Are you all getting that out there?
You know why? So you have to gauge them, right? We're in Cedar Rapids. But, so I'm having maybe he's not wealthy. I believe he is. But I'm having lunch with this gentleman yesterday who I've known for a while.
Partner, I know you got some money hidden somewhere.
I wish somebody loaned me $5 out there. But he avid X guy. He tells me about the transition that he's seen, and this is why you have to come from informed places. He said, "I love X, Anthony." He goes, "There's been so many. I get so much good information on X," and he talked about his algorithm.
That is a red flag.
Here's what he said. Let me finish, because he noticed his own red flag.
Waving the red flag.
He said. It used to be that way for me. He goes, Anthony, I can tell you now I'm not on X nearly as much as I used to be, because I visually, and I watched the change in my own algorithm. I watched, once Musk bought X, I watched it change, and I'm an avid X user, this gentleman was telling me. And because of what your point, he's not on there as much anymore because he decided to be more informed. He said, had I been the X user that just continued to take everything that I learned on there, I probably would be in the same space as a lot of people. But I was willing to recognize and watch he called, his words, not mine, the demise of what I thought was a great platform when it was Twitter.
So he doesn't think Jewish people have space lasers that what?
Yeah, he don't believe none of that.
Okay, okay, good.
My point is, he's shocked at how X has changed since it was bought by that man.
Exactly.
It wasn't. He was a Twitter lover,
Yes.
and he's disappointed. And this is a man who spends a lot of time on that.
Yes,
you know,
yes. I would have to say, well, in comparison, and I want to circle back to something, because when you were talking about your white lady friend who was a conservative, I want to circle back because I think I just spend too much time also just reading random things. And something else that popped up recently was that they were making a correlation between when there started to be this attack on women's rights and when women got their right to vote. All of a sudden, all of this pro-life stuff came out where it was like, okay, you get your right to vote, but you really don't get autonomy over your own body.
Yeah.
Because now we're going to push this narrative about pro-life. And again, I'm very much have your belief system, right? Like I believe heavily into, if you don't believe in abortion or whatever have you, that is fine for you.
Right.
And giving each person their autonomy to make that decision for themselves. And so, partner, what do you think about that? Because I thought that was a very interesting concept. And we know that oftentimes people will cover up things like, again, the Electoral College. It really was about limiting the vote of black people, right?
Yeah.
And so someone was saying, well, really, when women, because they were like, really, think about it. Women in general, all women, have only been able to vote for about 70 years in this country. That is astounding out there. When you think about, there's only been 70 years that we've been able to vote. When you think about, there's only been, like 50 years that I can get a bank account without my husband's sign. So when you think about that, they're saying like this attack on women's rights and all of these things, that was a thing to take place for oppressing women. And so there's this thought process, and I want to ask you what you think, that there's going to be a lot of conservative women who have historically been conservative, that they recognize that this is very much oppression for them, and they're going to go into their voting booth and they're going to do their American duty and vote for women's rights and women's freedom.
Yes.
What do you think?
Back to, I think you started this with my white female friend that I was talking to, and my thought by that is what I've watched in her and others is what I see is the same old minimalization, right? Trump's not a racist, or Trump's not a sexist. You know, think about, he's got women in his office. You know, he's pointed this person or that person, right? I call it a breadcrumb mentality.
Exactly.
We always use the excuse. We always justify oppression. Even
I have a black friend.
I have a black friend, right? I got a black friend.
Yeah.
We have a black president. So my white friend, I've tried to get her to understand, even for herself as a woman. Let's just take race aside as a woman. Your right to your body autonomy is one thing. Okay, you may agree or disagree with why that's happening, but what about your voting rights? What about the objectification of you in public?
Yeah.
Not because it's artistic or it's music or it's a movie, but because that's how they really feel about it. Like, how do you justify that? And it's always the breadcrumb mentality that it's not as bad as it used to be, or it's not what it used to be. Don't you think things have got better? Well, if I give you a couple crumbs, I might be able to feed you for a couple weeks. But you didn't give me the fishing pole.
Right, exactly.
And so that's the point. I'm trying to get her to understand. We can't deny that there's been progress.
Right.
That would be silly.
We're glad about it, right?
I'm glad about that.
Yeah.
But a breadcrumb mentality is what it is what I call it.
Again, justice does not automatically happen. Justice is the continuous pursuit of equity, of inclusion, of all of those concepts of belonging. You cannot take your foot off the gas. You have to realize that this isn't something that just naturally happens for itself. And when you talk about reproductive rights, people go automatically to abortion. Some of my friends that I am very close to were only able to have children because of in vitro fertilization, right? So what about that part of it? What about the woman, the 13-year-old girl that was raped, and now she has to keep her rapist baby?
Yeah.
What about the woman that naturally miscarries and she needs a DNC so that she doesn't die from an infection, become septic, or so that she doesn't not have, or so she's able to procreate in the future? It is so much broader than just, I don't agree with abortion. Like, again, to your point about minimalization, that typically happens when people don't have a good argument. That's my
absolutely.
That's been my experience.
Yeah.
When you have a good argument, good discussion points, you are not afraid of nuance.
Yeah.
People get afraid of nuance when they really don't have great defenses for what they're talking about.
So I'm going to take you here. This might be our last little segment. I know time's running, but people in those situations tend to use religion as their justification.
Okay. God said, love thy neighbor.
God said, love thy neighbor.
Yes.
You know, I'm a God-fearing man. But what are your thoughts around the folks that are trying to use religion to justify their racism or their isms, right?
I think that, first off, they need to go back and read their Bible, because if I remember correctly, there is no one sin that is greater than the other. Is that correct? Do we all agree out there? And in YouTube land, do we all agree? So if there is no one sin, according to the Bible, depending on where you fall at, right, that is truly greater than the other, then your regard for someone that has an abortion, which they put it under taking a life, would be similar to the lies you told, adultery.
Right.
Do you eat too much candy on the weekends? Because glutton. There are so many other things.
Right.
And so I think from a religious standpoint, we are also told not to judge, because we all are sinners.
Right.
And so under that pretense, you really don't have a right to judge somebody else. You don't. God has told you to love thy neighbor. So if we pivot there, and again, giving the bandwidth of, I know everybody out there, you might not be a believer, but that conversation, all the oppression that is happening, I've never seen anybody that's really truly walking in religious principles believe in oppression. Never seen that.
Right.
Never seen. I've always seen them say, what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
We think Jesus would do this?
Yeah. And what we are witnessing in real time is, and it's not anything new. If we are willing to seek to understand, and we're willing to think critically, you can agree or disagree after you are informed.
Yes.
But what we are witnessing is nothing new than time. Even going back to Jim Crow and Reconstruction, when people would use that Bible, they would hang us on a Saturday night. And sit in a pew on Sunday morning and find chapter and verse that said that was okay.
Yes.
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's no longer, unfortunately, we've lost touch. This person has gone as far off the deep end to the right as I can.
I love how PC you were with that partner. You said, we've lost touch. I love that.
I basically cut her off. Yeah. I was trying to be.
Sure, that's the language.
Yeah, I was trying to be PC. I was being PC, and I shouldn't be. I cut her off. But here's what happened, right? And it's important I tell the story and try to summarize it, because it speaks to what we're talking about. This person saw me stand up for the LGBTQ community. I had a post. I was at a rally, an event, and I went to a parade, and I posted about it. I was proud of that. And they responded to me offline and said, you know, Anthony, you mentioned in your post, for those of us that believe in God and believe in the Bible, you know, how is it that loving people could feel this so negatively about LGBTQ people? And she pointed me to Leviticus. She don't know I went to church. I'm not going to tell you the chapter. Y'all can look it up. But she pointed me to Leviticus and pointed me to the chapters that talked about if man sleeps with thy man, the wages of that sin is death.
Right.
And I was always taught
does she wear pants? Because, Old Testament, you're not supposed to wear pants. But go ahead.
It gets worse than that.
Okay.
It's very simple. So, and I was always taught in my world, in religious beliefs, that, again, you don't judge, and we contextualize.
Right.
And you take the word of the Bible and the Times or the Quran or whatever book you read, but you have to contextualize that.
Right.
So, says to her, thank you for that.
Right.
Thank you for asking me to read that. You're trying to inform me. I've read those chapters before, but I went back and read them again. But then what I have to ask you is, if what you're asking me to do, friend, is you're asking me to believe that people who are members of the LGBT community should die. That's what you're telling me. You've pointed me to the verse, and that's what the verse says. So should you die for your 2 adulteries?
Equity.
Should you die
and that's
for...
not even equity. That is just all
That's
tea.
fact. So you've had 2 affairs. Both were on you.
That's
One
right.
of them I had to literally, at your place of employment, I had to literally try to help you not get fired.
Yes.
Because you were sleeping with a man and you got caught in your parking lot.
Ooh.
You end up marrying that man, and now he's taking you as
That
far
makes
to
it
the
okay. That cancels the sin.
Yeah, that cancels the sin, right?
Marriage certificate. You didn't know
You got
that?
certificate, yeah.
It's like
That's
bleach.
Yeah. So should I don't believe you should die, but what you're telling me is I should believe you should die. You also have a daughter you kicked out of your house who's a member of the LGBTQ community. Are you telling me that your new husband should kill his daughter? That's what you're saying. So my point to all you folks, and I'm a God-fearing man, grew up in the church. Be careful of how you're using that good book.
Be careful.
Be careful of how you're using that good book.
What is it? Judge thee unless thee are ready to be judged. And I don't want to be judged, y'all. Joy has done her share.
Me too.
So I'm not judging nobody.
Me too.
Because I don't want anybody to judge me.
No. And we all do it. We're all judging. We're all sinners.
right.
But at a higher level, I have to. My message to folks that are using that good book to justify sin. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Don't do it. I agree.
Joy.
Partner, we got a lot of work to do. So would you like to put any friendly wagers out there on where?
I'm not going to put any wagers
Where do you
out.
think the country's going? Are we waking up here or where are we going?
I'm going to wager that we're not going backwards.
Okay.
I'm going to wager we're not going backwards, and I'm going to believe that our battle in this country is not going to be November 5th.
Okay.
It's going to be November 6th forward.
Exactly. Every day.
Every day. Every day. And we have to realize that that a fight for democracy doesn't stop at the polling station.
That's right.
So
that's one strategy.
That's one strategy.
All right.
Final thoughts from you. What you?
I'm going to say get out there and vote. And vote like your freedom depends on it. Vote like your kids depend on it. Vote like if you have a woman in your life that you love, vote as if her life depends on it, because it does. And we need you to do that first, but understand the true fight for justice, it's not a one-day thing. It's not just in the voting booth. I agree with you, partner. It is every day. And if we can recommit to that as a nation, putting our foot on the gas when it comes to seeking justice, then we can make this place, our country, what we promised, what it was founded on, and what it is meant to be.
Right.
But it starts with you. Get out there and vote.
Yep, absolutely. Well, thank you for our time. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors again. I want to make sure we give a shout out to Rise to Greatness, Tyler Lincoln Barnes, CBJ, Inclusive ICR, and Bankers Trust, and I'm on Communications. We thank you for your support. Thank you, listeners, for listening. Please like and share.
Thank you, producer.
Yes, thank you, our new producer. Alex is the man. We appreciate your time. Again, like and share. Check us out online, toprateculture.com.
Nick, we miss you.
We miss you, Nick. We had a great conversation today. We hope that today what you heard from us is not just opinion, but education and opportunity and thought-provoking things that you can take offline and go research, go think about, and contemplate yourself. Because at the end of the day, it's self-awareness. It's all about each of us as individuals. So thank you for your time. Anything else, Joy?
We'll know soon if we're waking up in 1619 or 2024.
Absolutely. Thank you for enjoying our election version. Take care, y'all. Peace out.